Hey everyone, my name is Manny Tejeda. I'm a sales and support specialist at Photocare, and welcome to week 3 of our Sony Video Bootcamp. Today we are joined by the awesome Joshua Needham. He is filling in for Gene Stuche. He actually has a lot of cool examples for us on slow and quick motion, something that, because it can be very complicated, but once you wrap your head around it, is one of the most useful tools in the Sony Alpha imaging lineup. And with that, I'm going to introduce Josh. He's an awesome DP, and he's from Texas, so you'll hear the southern drawl. Uh, so S&Q, slow and quick. It's a tool. Time is fluid, but you have control over it. Especially, and you can make moments very dramatic or emotional. Before we start Josh's presentation, I just wanted to ask everyone. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portal. That way we can keep track of them and answer them throughout the presentation or after the presentation. Um, if you want to send us messages in the chat box, that's fine. I'll answer them as need be. And if you have any questions for support, sales at photocare.com to reach sales, and rental departments, rental at photocare.com, support at photocare.com. I'll put this also in the chat window. All right. With that being said, Josh, take it away.
Hey, thank you so much, Manny. I'm also from the Northeast, so sometimes my draw will get canceled out with the dropped R's. So I've lived out here for about 7 years, so being around that draw, I guess, kind of just goes on you. But sometimes the Boston accent will come out. So without further ado. Slow and quick motion. Yeah, it's one of the most useful, for me, it's become one of the most useful video tools, I guess, or modes for capturing video directly in camera in terms of slow motion and quick motion. So when we talk about quick motion, there's 60p and there's 120p, but there's also, time-lapse quick motion, I guess you could say, right? So when we talk about time lapse,
it's usually about stills.
Yeah, exactly. So current generation cameras have that interval shooting function where you're able to capture as many images as you pretty much want. I mean, you can go 99 minutes on this for capturing as much of that high resolution, when we're talking about like an A7R4 boasting 61 megapixels, that is a lot of images in terms of 30 minutes, even, an hour's worth of time. So you're basically compiling a bunch of images into a video editing software, and then in a timeline, and then going across time. So if you're kind of unfamiliar with what a time lapse is, that's exactly what it is. You're making time speed up. You're creating it by fixed intervals, right? You're combining it into a movie. Again, with whatever video editing software you choose. You're compressing time, hours turn to minutes, minutes turn to seconds. I like them because they're great for showcasing the interesting ways you can move, or things move when you speed them up beyond normal speed. I mean, like the air balloons in this example here, and just going right back, those air balloons, it's a great example. It looks like they're bouncing up and down, but in real time, you wouldn't really notice that. So I guess that's exactly what I'm trying to say there with time lapse. With anybody with an alpha camera, generation 3 and above, you're able to utilize the interval shooting function, alpha 9s as well, a 6400 series, a 6600 series, 6100. So in all, it's a mode in the menu, interval shooting. You're allowed to have a start time, so you can actually put a lapse in between time lapse actually starts, and you can have up to 99 minutes of shooting time. And what's really handy is that it'll actually tell you on the bottom, based on all the settings that you're putting there, your interval shooting or your number of shots, your shooting interval, it actually will tell you how long it'll take, so that shooting time. There's also exposure sensitivity when it comes to shooting time lapses. So when you're in this mode, you don't have the luxury. When you're taking a normal picture, one after another, you have the luxury of kind of moving those settings around to expose for, let's say it's a sunset, and over time the sunset, it's getting darker, so you need to bump it up a bit or what have you. You can actually have the camera expose at a sensitivity rate or a threshold, I guess. You have a high or a mid or a low. I'd like to always say that, like, in the high sensitivity, since it's reacting so much to the different movements of light, it could kind of appear that it's flickering. So just an FYI, you mostly probably would leave it in mid or sometimes low.
What does high, mid, and low mean in this kind of thing? Like, is it a threshold?
So it's kind of it's how it's reacting to the exposure in the scene, okay, and how quickly it's actually going to respond to that. So you can have like instantaneous, like for high, it could be instant. So if something, it's lit for the background for that light, but something it comes in front of it or impedes it, and then it will directly try to expose for that, because this would make it a silhouette if it was exposed for behind you. So you can kind of just have a response, just like we can control the response of the autofocus with our cameras.
Right.
So that's a little bit on just time lapse, all in all. I mean, I have this little bit of a interval shooting guide, 1 second interval shooting for a lot of moving traffic or fast moving clouds for that style. And you have 30 seconds for like stars or like Milky Way astro shots, right? And everything in between.
Just in case anyone forgets to write it down right now, we'll be saving this and putting it as a recording on YouTube by tonight. So you can rewatch it as much as you'd like.
And for those out there, like, what video software could I use? There is LR Timelapse out there that actually just does this very specifically and very well. So you could use other video editing softwares like Adobe or Final Cut or what have you. But when you're talking about something that can just handle this in particular, why not?
Absolutely.
Great segue to S&Q.
Right. Yes. So this is the meat of it.
We're all here.
So S&Q, what does it mean? Slow and quick. It's the actual dial on your camera. Everybody looks at it and they're just like, what is this? What is this? Because there's a 1, 2, 3, MR, S&Q. This is the big mystery. This unlocks a lot of the potential of your Sony Alpha camera. Josh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a I like to call it a special video mode, right? It's available on the newer Sony cameras. Again, you're able to create slow motion and quick motion right in camera without having to use a video editing program. So you're recording in 24 to 30p, but technically the final output of that video is 24 to 30p, but you're recording in a higher frame rate. So you're able to do slow motion. You can provide slow motion in camera instantaneous. And this is a great example of slow motion captured with S&Q. You have a model and you have this falling snow, and with S&Q, you're able to capture that kind of movement, but then post it or share it instantly, right? Because we have Wi-Fi in these cameras and we could do something like that. This video straight out of camera.
Yeah, it's not just for professional uses. You can do this for slow motion for social media.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you can shoot
for sure, because
your dog running across the water.
Yeah, because honestly, the camera is going to do that processing work for you. So cameras like the new A7S III really evolved S&Q mode in general for allowing even higher bitrate video, higher megabits per second. So you have a lot more information than what a mobile-ready video file is going to give you. And Slow and Quick has its own menu system as well. You know, we're talking about cameras with 40 pages of menu. And at this point, I've pretty much memorized what page and tab I should be on at all times. But here, you know, we have the My Menu too. So you can always add these features to your My Menu for quick access. But in terms of S&Q, you move it over to the S&Q, you move the S&Q dial over. It's right on the top of your mode dial. And if that focuses, I got it right there in S&Q mode. Boom. And you're basically, you have an exposure mode, so you can do program auto, so you can have it automatically do everything. You can have aperture priority, so you can actually have control on the aperture alone. Shutter speed is automatic. Or you can have shutter priority, so that way you can retain a 60th of a second or something if you're being more critical. or you have full manual for those who are extremely critical.
And don't worry, everyone. We're gonna go over what all these P's and F and PS, all that means, because it can be very confusing.
Oh, you have to.
We'll go over it.
Yeah. I mean, if you go into those settings, into the S&Q settings, you're able to set your record setting and your frame rate. So when we start with frame rate, it's the more frames per second you have, the slower the video can look. The less frames per second, the faster your video will look. Record setting is like playback speed, but it works kind of in the opposite manner. The bigger the number, the faster the movie, or the smaller the number, the slower it is. I know it sounds confusing, but we're really going to break it down a little bit more. So let's just look at a couple of examples. So to get slow motion, you want to bump up the frame rate to a high number of frames per second. Here, we're going to go to 120 frames per second with a record setting of 30p. This gives us 4 times slow motion, and it says that on the bottom. It'll say that on the bottom of the menu. If I lower the record setting to 24p, you'd end up with a 5 times slow motion. Now with quick motion, or the Q part of S&Q, you want a smaller number of frames per second. So if I went with 1 frame per second and 60p for the record setting, you end up with a 60 times quick motion video.
So that looks like a time lapse.
Exactly. And I was about to say, if you're thinking to yourself that this sounds similar to a time-lapse movie, then you're absolutely right. Because that's what you're doing, except the quick motion of S&Q is creating that time-lapse movie for you. You get the full movie created in camera with a lot less control on settings, I guess. You know, if you were taking every single picture, you'd have a lot more control. Here, you're kind of just, you're dumping a whole bunch of pictures. Over time, it is going to record and then process it into a video for you.
It's an awesome feature.
Oh my gosh.
It saves time for a lot of people who are used to shooting time lapses and stills and having to edit most of it in post. Just make it as a video.
Yep. Time is money, right? I mean, that is literally today. And a handy chart for y'all. I throw this out here because this will really just be a quick guide as to the different setting variations and exactly what time of slow or quick motion you're going to get with the settings that you input there. Handy little resource. So real quick, I actually just want to cut over to
the fun time.
This beautiful bowl of water. I cleaned the sink this morning, so it's very shiny. And what I can do here is actually start a record of an S&Q, and I'm actually going to flip on some water and hit
splash zone.
Splash zone. Hit the record, and we are recording. So real quick, I'm going to do a little bit of movement with the water. Trying to get it to splash. There we go. And that's all I need. Let's not waste any more water. So I'm using here an FS7 Mark II. Now, it's a very fancy camera, but I'm using the S&Q mode just like our alpha cameras have. So a fancy, you know, $5,000+ camera utilizes that same exact recording mode as an alpha camera here. You know, you can talk about even an A6400 at $800, $900 doing almost the same exact thing.
This just shows me the power of the Sony A7S III, because you can mix and match it. If you're doing a job with multiple cameras, you don't have to choose.
Right. Oh my gosh, yeah. A7S III is a perfect complement to these cameras for sure. If anything, I mean, in terms of the S&Q, the A7S III is going to prevail over the FS unit in S&Q. But real quick, you're just going to see how it's processed in camera right away, slow motion. This is going to be a 2.5 times slow motion, so that's another little caveat here. The FS7 will max out at, it's maxing out here at 60p, so that's only a 2.5 times slow motion when you're dealing with 24p as the output. Yeah. Which really even makes the A7S III.
Still looks great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But you can imagine with the A7S III, you can realize in full HD, you could realize 10 times slow motion. So it would be 5 times slower than this, or 4 times slower than this.
And 4K at 120 is something that's rare in a full frame camera.
In a full frame camera, yeah. And I actually talk about that a little bit, like where you're actually getting the higher resolution cameras these days or 4K higher frame rate cameras these days in comparison to what we just saw and we're going to see literally in 2 days.
Yeah.
You know, because this camera, the A7S III will come out on Thursday.
Yeah, I hope you have your pre-orders in. It's in
um,
demand.
And real quick, so you saw the slow motion, and I'm actually just gonna, I have another camera here that I like to show off like the full workspace, and I'm gonna switch it over to S&Q, and I actually want to just show.
So which software am I seeing you through?
Okay, so now it's gonna be a little choppy because I'm actually running a time-lapse version, the Q part of it. So you're actually seeing, you're seeing Imaging Edge remote work, but right now it's showing you at 1 frame a second. I can show you at a very smooth refresh rate, but right now it's just gonna kind of behave like this. But we'll see what this looks like in the end. So I'm just gonna let it run, and we're gonna tab back over to PowerPoint and kind of talk about frame rates. You know, when we talk about the I and the P, so like interlace versus progressive scanning, you just have a lot more information in progressive. It's a lot smoother. With interlace scanning, each frame is scanned, but it's scanned as 2 fields. If there's a large amount of movement between those fields, each frame appears to be slightly offset. So kind of the camera interprets the frame in between, whereas progressive records every single frame. So when we deal about 60i and 30p, technically those are the same information, but the frame interval is, yes, exactly. So, you know, ideally we want P. So we're dealing with we're talking about 4K 120p with an A7S III.
All flat screen TVs on the modern age are progressive. So it's very rare to have to deal with I unless you're in broadcast.
Exactly that too. It's kind of moving out of the way too. I mean, we're definitely not going to see I anymore eventually someday. So why 24p, right? I mean, we're dealing in a digital era. Like, why does 24p still exist?
It's just a holdover from the old film days.
Exactly. And I totally lost you here. I'm back. And also with 24p, it just has that aesthetic. So we can actually, it looks really good. So it's the slowest speed possible with reasonable quality. And it's something we're really kind of used to seeing, and it really provides a cinematic atmosphere. Has that motion characteristic that we love.
All right. Ooh. Codecs.
Oh, the confusing part. Yes, codecs. So you got codecs, you got color sampling, you got file types. I mean, all of these variables go into delivering a video, compressing a video, sure, but delivering it.
So I like to think of it this way: there are capture codecs and there's deliverable codecs. Capture codecs are, I feel, the most important part because they will determine how much time it takes for you to edit your footage. If you're a nonlinear editor like Premiere or or Final Cut Pro 10 or DaVinci does not like your capture codec, it'll take you at least 3 times as long to edit your footage. Sony cameras have a very editor-friendly codec already built in, which I highly appreciate, especially with the A7S III. Do you want to show off some samples?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that, but when we talk about just in general, like what it really means to have, you know, like bit depth or color sampling. I mean, in these 2 examples alone, you should be able to see that a lower bit depth on that image on the left, you're going to get banding. You're going to get, you know, less gradation between color or tonality versus a higher bit depth. And with an S3, A7S III, we're realizing 10-bit in camera or 16-bit raw output. So really there's no compromise in a camera like that. As well as color sampling. A lot of the alpha cameras will be 420 color sampling. So, you know, the color separation is fair for most applications. And I kind of show that example of most applications going from corporate and event, journalism, news, all the way out into pretty much documentary and cinematography is when you kind of need that 422 color sample. That
you need to show that production
separation. Oh, yes, exactly. and especially 444. So like, you know, the higher end video cameras out there in the world that offer, you know, that raw output. But, you know, we're realizing that even today in alpha cameras, again, the A7S III giving you raw 16-bit output.
Yeah.
And again, when you were talking about mobile-friendly codecs, I mean, yes, XAVCS or just editor-friendly codecs. I'd like to also mention that they're also mobile-friendly in the idea that you could always, send these straight to your phone and use the Imaging Edge mobile application just as much as there is a software for the computer. There is a mobile application, and Movie Edit add-on is going to allow for the ability to actually use or handle those files on a more mobile workflow, And
Definitely.
when we're talking about, even XAVCS, which is a consumer level codec. I mean, you're getting all the alpha cameras doing this. It's better than the standardized AVC HD. I mean, it's better in the terms of more information, but you're still dealing with a more efficient compression. And now, really, yes. I mean, this is the A7S III in action right now. And let me get off real quick.
Yeah. Just keep in mind that everyone, this is like a consumer grade camera that's under $4,000. Can pull off amazing footage like this.
Yep. Technically, it's under $3,500, even better.
Even better.
But, we can realize 4K 120, and we can actually realize that kind of shooting ability with a lot of information per second, too. And that's the other thing, because with the unveil of the Alpha 7S III comes all-eye recording. So you get another recording codec to kind of use on top of XAVCS, that being all-eye.
Yes.
All-eye for 4K and in HD. So with all-eye 4K in S&Q, you can get 4K 120, or in the all-eye HD, full HD, you're going to get 10 times slow motion at 240 frames a second. Again, another quick video, but you could actually record everything in just slow motion. So like 240 frames a second or 120 frames a second. And then you have so much information in that file that you could go back and forth between slow motion. And again, I'm just going to play that one more time. You can go back and forth between slow motion and quick motion or normal speed, all with the same clip, or just all with the same recording mode. You don't have to kind of reserve a slow motion camera for that and a regular camera for this. It can all be one tool. And when I talk about all-in-one tool, I mean, I'm
comparing
kind
it to
of
the big
realizing we are actually offering a great complement to the big boys, right? I'm not saying this can replace a Red. I'm not saying to go turn in your Alexa LF into an A7S III. And certainly don't turn your Venice into an A7S III, but complement it with it. Why can't it be a B camera? Why can't it be even a C camera? I used to say the same thing about an RX10. That video quality is so good as a C camera that this can actually, this complements higher end cinematography 1,000%.
If you're shooting mainly corporate video, weddings, this is a fantastic camera for that.
Right. Yep. And especially if you're already in the system and you want to complement the system that you're already in too, because it really just, it harmonizes. It's one giant ecosystem. One alpha camera, you're going to know the next, and you're actually going to love the menu system in the new S3. That is literally the talk of the town.
Yeah, it's definitely more logical.
Yeah, I wish I had one to kind of go through real quick, but ultimately, just the ability to even use your touch. Yeah. That ability alone, I'm so accustomed to touching my phone, that touching a screen, that really just kind of solved the bill there. Ooh. And another
recording options.
Yeah, yes. Seriously, everything in red there is what came new with the A7S III. Everything in the black was, every alpha camera before it, A7R4 and below. Even some of the alpha, even the Alpha 9 or A6000 series cameras. But now we're gaining 3 new codecs. We're getting the all-intra codecs there on the bottom, which give you that higher end bit rate, 600 megabits per second. 10-bit 422 color sampling, but we're also getting XAVC HS in the 4K option. So what that really means there, that's the H.265 compression that you're kind of seeing going from what we're dealing with now, H.264. It's becoming the new norm. So we're future-proofing a camera that isn't even, it allows for formats that aren't even really being used yet, but we're there. And I just throw out one more little eye chart there that
so I'm glad you showed this. I'm glad you showed this for the card requirements, because CF Express Type A is the new memory card style. Even though it does support as well UHS-2 SD cards, which are V90 compatible, their S and Q goes up to 120 and 4K.
Right.
You cannot do that with the SD card, right?
Right. And so I'm not going to say you can't, because I've seen people do it. But what you're doing, I don't know how a card is able to handle that, but you're pushing more information than the bucket allows, right? You're putting more water into the bucket than the bucket can fill at a given time. So, and the other kind of caveat I like to say about CF Express, not even a caveat, it's just this is part of the design of the heat management of the camera. So when we're talking about filming for a long period of time, using a CF Express Type A card helps that heat dissipation. It's built of the quality, and it knows the camera that it's designed for. So it helps for passive cooling is what I'm getting at.
I remember
when we're talking about
the Sony Tough cards are basically metal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you drop one of those cards, it sounds like a coin hitting the ground or something.
Yeah, it sounds like an Apple Pay card.
yeah, exactly. But same quality here with the those Tough cards, the CF Express Type A card.
Those cards only come in 80 gigabyte and 160?
80 and 160. And this week, I mean, if you got people leaning on the fence about an S3, if they order their S3 and they go with a 160 gig card, they're going to get $50 off. So that's
that's huge.
An easy way to get, oh my God, that's the only way you're really going to get $50 off. Yeah.
Buy it as a bundle.
Exactly. And we have a lot of other bundle options too when it comes to the alpha cameras this week. You can get some lenses, some G Master lenses, 24-70, 16-35, and save an extra $100. I mean, just because you're buying that with an alpha camera.
Yep.
And really what we're talking about right now is just the fact that the need for a large format sensor in video is increasing tenfold.
Between low light performance, and everyone equates shallow depth of field with professionalism in video.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and I think my next example kind of even shows that a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
That's what you're gaining benefits like that, with the larger image sensor. The depth of field looks better. You get the better sensitivity for the low light and better dynamic range. I mean, I've put it to the test. I put smaller sensor cameras, smaller than APS-C cameras, in the same situation as a full frame, and one is never the other. It's a night and day difference.
I will say this, larger size sensors are harder to focus, especially if the shallower depth of fields, like at 1.4. I normally don't trust autofocus on a mirrorless camera for video, for professional work. Gene showed it to me about a week ago. Got to play with it at the store for a bit, and I was completely blown away by how natural the autofocus on that camera felt.
Oh, on the S3, the ability to control the focus transition speed. Is insane. I mean, before we had the ability to control the drive speed, but never how it actually reacted between subject and environment or subject to subject. So that ability alone, I mean, we see that even in the ZV-1 camera. Yeah. in a feature like that with the product showcase setting and things like that, you're seeing that ability. We see it in the Alpha 7C, the focus control setting. So, we're seeing that since the S3 already implemented into another camera.
So this is a question that I generated because I've always had this question. So previously with S&Q mode, there was always an autofocus limitation on the previous models. Have you run into that with the S3?
No, not at all. I mean, the focusing system in the S3 is so advanced. I mean, it's nothing like before. And I'm honestly saying that. I'll take off the Sony hat right now and I'll just say it. But no, seriously, that it's so advanced and so sophisticated, so smart. It picks up on the eye immediately. I mean, I was in demos. People had mask on and it was still doing eye recognition even with mask on. Now, I'm not saying that's 100% accurate every time, but it was doing it. So it really just sees the pupil and goes right away.
All right. So currently we don't have any questions. So did you want to talk about audio with S&Q?
Oh my God, I never even, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
didn't even mention that. So when you're recording in S&Q mode, you actually don't have any audio that's being recorded simultaneously. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing. Because the good thing is, since you're doing slow motion, you wouldn't really want to be recording that audio in that same time frame.
You're not going to have an interview in slow motion.
Exactly. But you're also not going to feed into that higher video size, file size, right? Because if you're adding audio, I mean, audio it's a small number for audio, but it still adds to the whole file. So record audio separately. We have audio tools for doing such a thing. There are recorders out there that exist, but ultimately, unless you were doing any kind of like fast-paced sports or action or something like that, that's when you would want to have the audio with it. But again, professionally speaking, we would record it separately.
Okay. All right. And with that being said, everyone. So I guess we answered everyone's questions at the moment. So we have. Oh, thanks, Josh. You were awesome. That was a great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I'm glad Gene asked you to fill in for him this week. We have next week, which is the part 4 of the Sony Video Bootcamp series, is putting proper practice to application, shooting, editing, and delivery. And you can sign up at photocare.com and our events page, which I am sharing right now. So you can see that this is today's. We have a Sony Video Bootcamp series there. Please sign up and please ask your questions there as well, so we can have them ready before the actual event. And October 15th, we have a phase 1 advanced IQ tethering options hosted by our own Anthony Festa and featuring phase 1's John Gilbert. Switching over. There you go. All right. So we're going to record this, package it, have a few, so you can rewatch it at your leisure at our YouTube channel of Photocare NYC. And with that being said, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Josh, you were awesome. Hope to have you back again soon.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to be back. Thank you
so much. Bye, everyone.